Joining us now, a man who knows something about getting results, Newt Gingrich is the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Understanding Trump, and just one of the great Americans out there. I love Newt. I love Citizen Newt, by the way. I love Craig Shirley's book about you, Newt. That's fantastic.
I thought he did a remarkable job, and Craig really spent several years on the project, and I found it kind of exhausting to go back and relive some of the times he's describing it.
Well,
yeah.
The thing about
how many things we did,
right? And look at what you overcame. And there are look, times are different. Times have changed. You can't draw perfect parallels to anything. However, I will say this: you put together a coalition of people, and at times you did have to work with Democrats to make real progress for the country and to do things that nobody thought was possible. That you won the House. The first time in 50 years, you had the House of Representatives in Republican hands. You had the simple idea of laying out what you wanted to do, and then you started ticking off the agenda items one by one. And lo and behold, people said, well, that makes sense.
I learned a lot of that from Reagan. When we passed the Reagan tax cuts in '81, 1/3 of the Democrats voted with us. When we passed welfare reform when I was Speaker in '96, half the Democrats voted with us. So, I came out of a background where it really wasn't about getting Democrats, it was about getting the American people. And if you had a big enough idea and they liked it enough, they would get Democrats to vote for it. And in that sense, I don't think people should feel bad if President Trump finds a way to get Democrats to vote for things. I think he's got a big tax cut bill coming down the road. Frankly, I think by the time it gets fleshed out, it's going to be so attractive. I think they will get some Democratic votes just because people back home are going to say, why do you want me to pay higher taxes? And it'll become a higher tax, lower tax fight. And as a general rule, the American people end up on the side of lower taxes.
Newt, one of the things that I have said for some time is that if the people working for Trump or the Republicans on Capitol Hill do not deliver results for him, he will find people who will. And he's very pragmatic when it comes to results. He wants results. He wants to see the ball moving down the field. Not always going to be pretty. He'll make mistakes. Everybody stumbles a bit. But he wants to see results. And where was Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan? I mean, if they're so upset, where were they for the past 6 weeks? They were on their congressional break in August, their recess. Meanwhile, Donald Trump took a little bit of time in New Jersey. But he comes back and says, okay, what are we doing? What are we doing here? But where were they? Where was the outrage of the last 6 weeks?
I thought that the quote you had from Ryan was pretty accurate, that Trump, having been to Houston twice and having a real sense of the scale of the disaster, thought this was the right week to be bipartisan and to try to find a way to get it done quickly, and did not want to risk getting bogged down in a partisan fight with the backdrop of both what happened in Texas and Louisiana, and of course the danger of what's coming down the road potentially for Florida. I think he thought, this is a time to be practical, get it done, and frankly, I've been saying all along, they need to get the tax bill done. The tax cuts have to be passed by Thanksgiving. So the 90-day deal doesn't affect the tax bill. People say, it's going to make it harder at the end of the year. If they're still fighting over the tax bill at the end of the year, they have failed.
I think it's over anyway. If they repeat that so our listeners heard it.
Well, I mean, I think that they've got to get the tax cuts done by Thanksgiving, and I don't think they can slide to the end of the year and getting the tax cuts done, because then they won't have any effect on the first and second quarter of next year. We need real economic growth the first and second quarters of next year. So Republicans are running as the party that brought you higher take-home pay, better jobs, and more economic growth. If they stumble around and they can't get this tax cut done, I think that they have a huge problem at that point.
Don't you think Donald Trump has gotten Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan's attention here? Like you either get this done, this tax reform, or I'll find someone who can get something done. I think it's leverage against the Republicans, frankly.
Well, I think it's a signal that he's going to keep floundering around until he finds a formula that works. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I mean, to be honest, Chuck Schumer is not going to put a conservative on the Supreme Court.
No.
There are a lot of places where you can have tactical agreements with the Democrats, but you're not going to get a Trumpian agenda basically by Democrats. I mean, Reagan, 2/3 of the Democrats still voted against Reagan, and half the Democrats voted against us on welfare reform. So, and both of those were very popular. But I think as a tactical matter, he's going to cut deals. I also think taking Heitkamp with him to North Dakota, the Democratic senator, makes a lot of sense because he's maximizing the pressure on her to break with her party and vote for the tax cuts.
I think Newt, I think he's running a play against both sides to keep it in my football because I'm so obsessed with football. I think he's running a really interesting play here, and it might be a spectacular success or it might not work, but we know what's been happening isn't working. That's for sure. That's not working at all.
Well, I mean, look, first of all, from his perspective, getting this deal done this week, getting it signed this week is a victory. Mm-hmm. And it sets a stage for him to be the unifying bipartisan figure, and to also say to the Democrats, don't divide us. So in some ways, for example, it increases the pressure on Schumer to agree to all the various nominees who are currently locked up in the Senate by the Democrats. Because Schumer's got to decide, does he want to continue to appear to be the guy willing to be bipartisan, or does he want to revert back to being a hardline Democrat? And we'll see how that works out over the next 2 or 3 weeks. But I think Trump certainly thought it was worth the risk, and I think part of it was psychological. I think he just thought it would look terrible with everything going on in Texas and Louisiana and potentially in Florida if Washington degenerated back into a partisan fight. And he thought it was worth a great deal psychologically to prove we could work together.
I'm going to say it right now. I think it was brilliant. Anytime you have these tired old leaders on Capitol Hill look like they just got hit in the face with a 2x4, I'm sorry, I think it's a good thing. I think people have to wake up and see what's happening to this country. So I think it ends up being a brilliant move. This is what Donald Trump tweeted an hour ago, Newt. He said, for all of those DACA, deferred action kids, who are as old as 36, by the way, that are concerned about your status during the 6-month period, you have nothing to worry about. No action. What do you think's going on there, Newt?
Well, I think he faced a really big problem. It's clear, and even people like Senator Feinstein of California agree, that what Obama did to protect the so-called Dreamers was unconstitutional. He didn't have the power to do it. And all of the legal advisors that the president had told Trump that it was unconstitutional. On the other hand, you have about 690,000 people who've been following the rules, signing up, obeying the law, getting jobs, and they came to the U.S. at the average age of 6. For many of them, they have no notion of whatever country they came from. And I think Trump felt that he had to somehow balance compassion and the Constitution and try to get both done, and I think he's done that.
But here's the problem,
Newt. Basically put the burden on Congress.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. But my concern about this is unless he gets enforcement first, not the concurrent amnesty with a promise of enforcement. That's the reason the Gang of Eight bill tanked, because it was like this, this pie in the sky idea that down the road we're going to do this enforcement. Meanwhile, you get instant legal status, and the voters didn't want that. That's why that Gang of Eight went down in flames, and Marco ended up backing away from his own bill. People saw through this. So if he's going to give any type of legal status, he's got to get a lot in return. And I mean a lot, not just a down payment on a wall. He's got to get a lot more than just goodwill from the New York Times. This has got to be a real enforcement first, and then a gradual, legalization.
But he has been steadily creating a very different climate. The number of people trying to get into the U.S. has dropped dramatically. I think like 75 or 77%. We are aggressively rounding up the MS-13 gangs all over the country.
Well, what about chain migration? What about the mother, the father, the uncle, the grandmother, the abuela? What about everybody?
I think that the only bill that could pass, because I agree with you, if you try to turn taking care of the 690,000 Dreamers into also setting up legalizing chain migration, then it's hopeless. They'll never pass.
What are their parents, though? The parents are here. What are we going to do to the parents? The DAPA went down in flames, by the way. That they tried to push that parent staying thing. Nobody wanted that. So then you're going to have kids who are 16, and they're going to say, "Oh, my mother's in Honduras, so you're going to bring my mother," and then that's another 5 million people. That's all I'm saying. It's the reality of how it's implemented is different from the emotion of the moment. Like, well, you have the valedictorian and Calistoga, who's fantastic. Okay, well, for every valedictorian I show you who's suffering, I'll tell you a valedictorian in another part of the country who's an American citizen who's suffering. So I think it's a dangerous tack here that he's taking. That's my concern.
Well, I guess all I can say is I think overwhelmingly the American people were not inclined to deport people who came here at the age of 6, and that's just a fact. And I mean, I got drawn into it in part because there's a priest in the cathedral in Atlanta who came here at 3 years of age.
All right. Okay. I know, I get it. Yeah, the priest. Well, let's talk about the Catholic Church getting $90 million for the Migration Refugee Committee. $90 million they get a year from the federal government. The Catholic Church doesn't want bodies in the pews; it wants money in the coffers. I'm telling you, I think the Catholic Church is in bed with the federal government on this refugee deal, and I don't like it one bit. I like the money flow. You stop that money flow to the bishops, suddenly they'd be singing a different tune on the refugee resettlement. Newt, that's my concern. Dolan, the whole crowd.
Well, I think you and I probably just disagree on that.
Yeah. You think Dolan has the best interest of the working class people in the United States? I mean, just like you see through this, Newt. You cut the money off. Suddenly, maybe the resettlement efforts, not what they think or what they want, but I'm talking about their work in resettlement wouldn't be quite as. And I forgot Callista's at the Vatican, so I might be causing trouble here. I don't want to cause trouble for Gingrich. By the way, I love your Defending America series, your new online series, and it's exclusive online class that Newt hosts, and it begins Thursday, September 14th, and you can subscribe. You can use the promo code FREEDOM. You get 20% off, defendingamericacourse.com. Newt, is there anything you can't do? Do you make a good souffle, too? I mean, you just...
No. Unfortunately, I don't do that. But this started because you'll remember years and years ago, I did a course called Renewing American Civilization, and people kept coming up to me and saying, would you do a modern version of it? And I do think if you look at the left and you look at what's happening at Berkeley and elsewhere, that defending America is a very important idea. And so, if people go to defendingamericancourse.com, I think that they'll see that there's a lot of material there that helps you win the argument. And we've got to beat the left at the most basic levels. I mean, they're just plain wrong.
No,
and I think they're dangerous for our survival.
Well, you're completely right. It's all on the line for this country. And your analysis is so important. We really value you. Love you, Newt. Thank you so much. Citizen Newt is it's a great book. You realize what he went through to put that majority together with a contract with America. And he changed Washington, changed the course of history. Citizen Newt by Craig Shirley and defendingamericacourse.com. We'll take a break. Don't go away.